Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday night. I know your eyes may be deceiving you, but it is not Monday night, although you normally would see the three of us on the IDP show. It is Thursday. Thank you. Thank God for that. But we brought on our boy Kraig because we want to talk rookies, and we're going to go into specific rookie classes. So we're going to talk about quarterbacks this week. And my goal is to bring on some of the evaluators, some of the team, rookiedraftguide.com and RotoHeat.com to help talk about the guys that we're going to be bringing up. I know that you'll normally hear Paul and I talking Devy, and we've been doing some mocks and things like that. We will continue to do that. But we're going to go into the individual classes for the next few weeks to break up the mock mania that's been going on. So as always, if you want to keep up with the players that we'll be talking about and the evaluations behind it, rookiedraftguide.com is where it's at. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us every week. As I always say, we love you guys and appreciate it. If you have questions, make sure you throw them in the chats. I'm watching the chats and we will get to them. We answer everything live while we're live, and then I come back after the fact if you leave comments on YouTube later. We appreciate that as well, because as you comment and like the video, YouTube then says the video does not suck and we should probably push it. So please do so. First and foremost, gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Kraig, how's it going, sir? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I'm doing all right. Might have some kids getting sick that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is no fun, but it's nice to come on towards the end of the week as opposed to sort of that, oh, Monday's over, let's relax. It's more of a, oh, the week's finally about done. Let's get into it a bit here. Paul, your day didn't seem to be as fruitful for you.
Yeah, the office is always fun. There's always that one person who gets a individual I've ever spoken with, and then tomorrow happens and they're no longer that person. So just it's been fun. I'm glad the weekend's almost here.
Yeah.
Brad, how are you?
I am very glad the weekend's almost here. It's this week's been a grind, trying to write content, get videos ready for YouTube, get rookie draft guide stuff done. It's been fun, but it's been a long week, plus being a project manager in my day job, lots of things going on. So can't complain. It's always fun when we get to talk about rookies. I see our boy Joe, who's one of our evaluators over on Facebook, giving us his, I'm assuming it's 1, 2, 3, which would be an interesting take on it. So we're just going to get into it. We don't have a ton of news and notes, so we're not going to do news and notes. I want to get to as many rookies as possible, and I want to get through at least the top 10 based on our evaluators' ratings. And we're going to start, and we're going to go based kind of on the evaluators' ratings and not Joe's ratings, obviously, because his is different. So number one, everybody knows it. What?
So does he know that it's not the tight end rankings? Hi, Joe.
One of these times we're going to have to get some crosstalk going on here with you and Joe. That would be a... I'm not going to host that show, but that'll be fun to watch for sure.
You could do almost sort of like around the horn type of thing, Brad. I think you could host it, and you could have Joe and Rick and Paul and like Anthony or something on the panel. And just you need your mute button, but I think it'd be fun.
I better get that mute button with those four in the room. That would be different. So we're gonna start at the top. We're gonna start with the one that is normally everybody's clear-cut number one, unless you ask Paul and Chris Sims and now Joseph Kidder. We're going to talk Trevor Lawrence, quarterback Clemson. He, for anybody who's done Devy for any length of time, he's been kind of the anointed next big name quarterback coming out. Depends on how you feel about him, but 6'6", I mean, he's got a big arm. He's been doing it. He's been successful at the collegiate level for some time. I'm going to start with you, Kraig, because you're our esteemed guest. Let's talk about him. What do you think about Trevor Lawrence?
So I think we're starting to see what we always talk about in retrospect with the really big name quarterback when there's one of them at the top of a class, which is he's been around enough. People have seen enough of him. They're kind of sick of hearing about him. So you start to see people nitpick more about what they don't like about him. This happened to a degree with Peyton Manning. And no, I'm not saying he's going to be Peyton Manning, but that sort of thing happened to him too before the draft many years ago, where people they're just sick of hearing about all the great stuff and what they see. And part of the job is to, find areas where they can improve so you know what you're getting when you're drafting a fantasy product. And Lawrence has areas where he can improve. Some of his intermediate to deep ball placement, accuracy down the field, that sort of stuff. He has some work to do on, but he's a guy that has, in my opinion, stepped up to the plate. He's really led that Clemson offense to the great levels that they've been reaching. And he hasn't done anything to, in my mind, push him out of that spot that he was anointed with, coming into here. So I do still have him as my number one quarterback. I do have the first pick in a Superflex league. And to all those watching that are in that league, yes, my plan is to take him. I know Paul has some concerns about the head coach situation that he's going into, and I think you can have those. But one of the things we also preach about is talent over situation. So to me, I'm still going to keep Lawrence as my 1-1. Paul?
Yeah, I actually like his accuracy more than you do. He's got a fine arm, but it's not awesome as far as power on it. He doesn't labor any of his throws. I found that he will also just drift a little bit in the pocket, which will lead to some sacks. But there's not much that you don't like here. He will have a few throws that you go, that's not accurate, but overall he'll also have some that he puts right on the money. He's going first overall. He's heading first overall in Superflex leagues. I would rather have someone else just because the price is lower, but I mean, yeah, he's solid.
And Rick brought up a good point over on YouTube. He read an article that at a certain point, people stop looking for what you do well and start trying to find what's wrong with you. And I think what you are talking about, Paul, leads us to an interesting conversation about at what point do you get out from under somebody? So we talk about selling high. Is there a possibility that Lawrence's value gets any higher than it is right now? I don't know. I mean, that's the question that I've listened to guys, shameless plug for Clubhouse. I've heard people in Clubhouse talking about it already in just the 2 days I've been in there. It seems to be a conversation that people starting to drift towards is, can this guy get any more valuable than what he is right now? And I don't know that. I mean, Urban Meyer is my only concern for him. He has great ball placement. He can get out of the pocket and is impressive with his athletic ability at 6'6". I mean, he can do really anything you can ask of him, and he is a true franchise quarterback, but Urban Meyer is the only concern I have. I mean, Urban Meyer, as soon as they hired him, James Robinson's value becomes very low just because of the type of scheme that Urban Meyer typically runs. James Robinson's not the type of back for that scheme. He's more of a north-south, just one cut go. Lawrence, I think, is more than capable of being not scheme dependent. So he should be fine in this, but Urban Meyer's value scares me, the way that he runs things. He's the only concern I have for Lawrence. But the selling high is the conversation I think would be interesting that we figure out, or try to figure out how to determine with him.
I mean, for someone coming into the league that hasn't played, I think you always have that opportunity that they could turn into something even better than what people are perceiving. There's a difference between being the guy in college and everyone's expecting you to be amazing in fantasy or real life football, and then actually doing it in the NFL. So I think there is that step up, but it also depends on, in your own specific league, what are you being offered? What is this massive overpay? Because I keep hearing, if you can get a haul for Lawrence, maybe you can't get a haul. Maybe there's, and I think there are in a lot of Superflex leagues, teams that are just scared off from even trying to put an offer out there, because much like in the NFL, you can gut your fantasy team to go get one player, and then you're left rebuilding just around one guy and, stinking it up for a few years. We saw that in the NFL with some teams that go big for a quarterback and then just are stuck in the mud for a few years. You can do that to your fantasy team just as easily. So, from the selling end of it, yeah, there's an offer out there that I couldn't possibly rightly refuse for him. But am I likely to get it? I don't think so.
I think every super flex offer is, hey, I picked second, third, fourth, fifth. What is 1-1? And it's what else do you own, or what else, or how comfortable are you with some of these other prospects? I mean, there's a lot of things that can be asked, but every one I have heard has been, hey, what is 1-1 moving to second through fifth or sixth, somewhere in that range. That's been every one I've heard.
Yeah.
At
Well,
least.
and in our Superflex Devi IDP league that we have, the conversation when I traded um, Baker Mayfield originally was, what's Trevor Lawrence cost? And I said, well, I've never heard an offer that makes sense for me to move him, but let's talk. And unfortunately, the guy wanting him, I'm in the middle of a rebuild, obviously. So a guy like Baker makes more sense to move, sort of, than Trevor Lawrence, because Lawrence can survive as I'm rebuilding, where Baker may not. But I was like, I'm willing to hear it out. You tell me whatever bring me your best offer, or at least something that doesn't make me go, you're joking, right? And there was just nothing. I mean, 112 and some of these things in a Debbie league. I mean, there's just not a lot of value there. And to get pieces to go with a late first round pick, I mean, it didn't make sense. So we turned to, hey, what can we, he needed a quarterback because he thinks he has one more year of championship viability. He wanted to try to go for it. So it wound up being, for those that are in the viewing audience, I wound up trading Baker for 112, George Pickens, who's the wide receiver from Georgia, who I love, is a top Devi piece. Brian Edwards and Keyshawn Vaughn. Like, I felt like I got a fair return for a quarterback that may or may not have been on my roster in another year or two, because who knows if he's finally turned the corner, or if he's just going to keep getting worse. So, but still, we couldn't come to an agreement on Lawrence, because the value just isn't there. So I haven't found the selling price point yet.
But I mean, just throwing this out there, I mean, you would sell him for some sort of like high level established quarterback where you'd probably have to send a little something back, right? I mean, we're in the same league and we're not talking about trades at all, but like if I was giving you Kyler Murray, to get that with him being established, you'd probably have to add something to Lawrence, right?
Oh, well, I would think so. I mean, it depends on who you're
Yeah.
talking about, but yeah, probably.
Well, I'm just saying hypothetically here, yeah. So, I mean, to move Lawrence, that's sort of what you're talking about, because he's supposed to be this good. If you're going for another quarterback, you'd want someone established. I mean, you don't really want to do, you know, I don't know who the heck was a guy last year that people were high on. That, Herbert. Are you really going to be adding a whole lot? It depends on how you like Herbert. To Lawrence to get Herbert. I mean, it's 1 year too, so you got to factor that in, as opposed to someone like Mahomes. You're going to have to add quite a bit to Lawrence to get to Mahomes. So it all has to be what makes sense for you. But that's probably why you don't see these trades. Is that value difference? I think is a wide chasm for a lot of people.
Right. Very true. So that's Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he is a franchise quarterback. I mean, there really isn't a lot to say about the person, the player. I mean, even and I look at even the little character thing. So he wanted to get in a pro day so that people could come and see him prior to his surgery. Like, what else is there to see? But he was still willing to do that with the injured shoulder and all that before he goes in for surgery. I mean, that just speaks to the player, and I really appreciate it out of him. He seems like, from everything I've read and everything I've been looking at, humble kid, works hard, and then is willing to do whatever. I mean, that's what you want to see if you're going to spend a 1-1 looking for your, generational talent quarterback. Now we just hope that Urban Meyer doesn't mess it up. So we'll see. We have a question, and I was hoping that Ryan would give me a little more detail, because oh yeah, okay, he did. Rookie draft. Okay. So Ryan over on YouTube, we appreciate jumping in and having the conversation with us. He has deep picks in a 1QB PPR Dynasty rookie draft. 6'11", 6'12", 7'11", and 8'12". So these are later picks. Who are some deep QBs I should consider drafting there? I plan on taking a bigger name earlier, in the third round. So he's looking to get some quarterback depth. we haven't gotten deep into our conversation, but let's jump to maybe a guy that could be a sleeper that could develop that is going to be down there. And I can start if you guys need a second to think about it. I think I have a name. Okay. All right. So I would say, if you're picking that far down, you're probably going to have to go with a guy that could develop into something that has physical upside. You're looking for, yeah. Clove over on YouTube said the name I was going to say, which is Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. He has all the physical tools.
Yeah.
He can make all the throws. The biggest issue for me is that he is going to need time to develop. He could lead to being a starter. He could be a player in the league at some point, but he's going to need some time to develop. So, Ryan, the bigger question is if you're struggling and you need quarterback help, you may try to package that third with something else, with a couple of those other picks, maybe to move up a little bit to ensure you get a quarterback that can start like a Mac Jones or Trask or somebody who has a quicker chance of seeing the field if you need quarterback help. That would be my thing is if you're really struggling for quarterback depth, you might want to try to make a move to get up higher to get a quarterback. Even if it's early third round and you target one of the guys that should be starting, because it's a 1 QB draft, quarterbacks are all falling outside of the top one.
If he's looking for a straight answer on who can you get for free, Shane Buechele for me. I mean, but if that's your only option. Again, I don't like to pick guys who aren't going to see the field ever, but he's my pick of the litter out of the free group.
Yeah, Buechele or Erlinger.
And he might be free in super flex also. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, Buechele and Erlinger are two guys that I think could be deeper potential opportunity guys, but in my mind, they both have to go to something that's like a West Coast type system where you can get the ball out quick, short, intermediate passes. I mean, things like that. And there are offenses that do that, but those would be the guys that would be closer to free. What about you, Mr. Kraig? What do you think?
My name is Peyton Ramsey. He's smart. He showed that he's able to sort of do both of the athletic moving around, getting out of the pocket, making some plays. I mean, he's not like some of these other guys that we're going to talk about higher up in terms of athleticism, but he's smart and he also isn't, held back by his arm. He doesn't have a cannon. He's not going to be thrown all over the field making amazing plays. But I think he's efficient enough that if he gets into the right offense, and hopefully these guys are, considering they're going to be drafted by a team, that if he's going to be called upon to start at some point, that he's not going to embarrass himself.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, that's an interesting name, and I like it. So Ryan, we thank you. Hopefully that helps. We gave you two different directions you can try to go, depending on your situation, depending on your needs. Good luck, and let us know if we can help any other ways. Okay, so yeah. So next one. So number 2 on our list would be Justin Fields. This is gonna be a fun one. So I've spent a lot more time digging into his tape, and when I started to think about fantasy relevance, because that's what RotoHeat is. We're fantasy football. I started looking at him and started comparing him to guys like the Lamar Jacksons of the world to see, because Lamar Jackson's fantasy relevant. I mean, I don't have any shares, and his style, concerns me for the long haul, but I looked at him and I tried to compare and say, listen, is Justin Fields able to do what Lamar's doing? Running around, making plays on the move, being able to get the ball downfield from time to time. Accuracy may be concerned, but can he at least hit some of them? I mean, he checks all those boxes. Like, he can do what Lamar does. So if Lamar's fantasy relevant, why can't Fields be fantasy relevant? So I started to really reconsider my thoughts on Justin Fields because, Paul and I have talked plenty of times over the last few months that neither one of us were big Fields fans. I haven't been a big Fields fan yet. And then as I continued to pound the tape out and really look at it, I'm like, you know what? I think he can at least be fantasy relevant. I don't know that he'll be NFL relevant, but fantasy relevant I think is an easy thumbs up for me. So Kraig, I'll go back to you. What's your thoughts on Justin Fields?
Saving the best for last on this one. I like it. He's got the athletic ability that you want in sort of what they're calling today's modern NFL quarterback. He's able to make throws. I think his accuracy is a lot better than what Paul thinks, so time will tell on that. To me, it's more of that mental aspect of the game that he needs refinement and to just sort of be controlled a bit under, and like decision making, pocket awareness. He does know how to keep himself safe as a runner where he's not putting himself out there to just get destroyed like some of these guys. Unfortunately, RG3, sorry to say, but a guy like him who just, ruined his career basically. Fields has what you want in a fantasy quarterback. And I've seen a lot of talk on the Twitter and all that.
The Twitter.
Yes, the Twitter. It's late at night. It's for all the old folks watching. He very well may be more fantasy relevant to start than Lawrence. But I think long-term Lawrence is going to be around longer, and I think he's going to do well over a longer period of time that I'd prefer to have Lawrence over him. If you're talking just year one and year two, and we know that Fields is starting with a running ability and all that, yeah, he might be better. But long-term, I like Lawrence still by a good amount. Paul, go on your diatribe.
Fields, I think, is the most overrated Ohio prospect since some thought that Ed Edwards was the Zodiac. There it is. All right, let's hit the pros first of all. Athleticism. Cam Newton. He can run you over, and he has some wiggle for 230. Also, he's got a cannon arm. The problem is the negatives are he's not overly accurate with it. He doesn't have a lot of touch. He pretty much only throws the fastball accurately. And even when you see them heading in from 40 yards, 50 yards, it's really shallow. And it's because he doesn't have a lot of touch on it. I'm just not willing to invest in somebody who can't. I don't see it overly often. Also, from the mental perspective, if he looks right off the snap, that's where the ball's getting thrown. He doesn't look right and then left and then. I mean, I know you had the play against Clemson where he did that, but yeah, you don't see it often at all. If he looks one side, that's the read. And I'm just not interested in him because the most important aspect of the position is in the brain, and I don't see it there. I just don't.
So you don't think that, like, in terms of looking guys off and going through his progressions, that he's going to be in a position to improve that at all?
He might. I'm just not willing to invest any money on it. One of the other things I saw was he pretty much always had a clean pocket. And if someone makes their way through, also if you watch the Indiana film from this last year, you can see it. He crumbles under pressure.
Yeah, his pocket presence isn't great. I mean, he needs to work on that.
I mean, if he works out, he'll work out on somebody else's roster, not mine.
Yeah, he's got insane balance. I mean, I don't remember which film I was watching now earlier, but I mean, one guy had him down. He kept his balance, spun around, was hit as he was spinning, kept his feet, and kept moving. He's a very talented rusher. And I do love that we've got a friend in the chat by the name of Ricky. Says, keep in mind, this guy is also a Jameis Winston fan. So,
should we point out who this guy has for Superflex in one league, or should we just let the...
It's too far into the weeds here.
Yeah, no.
That's not showing up. Save that for around the horn with Brad.
I need my mute button for those conversations.
Okay.
Fields is a guy that I've at first didn't like, and now I'm warming up to a little bit as I think about the fact that he's got fantasy relevance to him. The rushing ability, and yeah, I see. Some of the things that you talked about are things that you can coach. So if he goes to a situation where he doesn't have good coaching, then I agree with you completely. That probably isn't going to get better. But if he goes somewhere where they have a proven quarterback coach or somebody that can really help develop, taking some off the fastball. I mean, like, you can fix some of those things, and that's where I'm at with that. Is you can try to fix those things. The athletic stuff you cannot fix. So those are, if a guy's not fast, not good balancing, I mean, all that stuff really isn't adjustable. So I'm not saying I'm a big fan. I still think he's probably not my QB2 at this point, but I think the conversation needs to be had that he can be fantasy relevant, even if he's not a great pro. But
Paul, who's better, Fields or Fromm? Well, that was the Georgia decision, wasn't it?
Somewhat. They had a proven roster when that decision was made, and it's not always nice in hindsight, because also if you look at Texas, they basically selected Ellinger over Bouchel, and oops. So I mean, it's not the only. It's one of those who's got more seniority and have they shown it. It's not necessarily is this a ceiling argument.
I understand, but I'm just asking. I mean, we kind of see what happened to Fromm. That's why I was just curious who you'd take in the NFL.
I liked Fromm last year, and clearly the NFL decided no. So
no.
All right.
Justin, you're absolutely right over on YouTube. NFL coaches can teach touch and its progressions, but they can't teach that arm strength, and that arm strength is nice. I watched a few of the passes deep to Garrett Wilson, and it was exciting. All right, so next up on our list would obviously be Zack Wilson from BYU. I'm a fan. I mean, obviously this kid kind of came out of nowhere. We weren't having this conversation in the prior to the college season. But I want your guys' take on him, and I'll finish up on this one. Kraig, you can start us off.
Yeah, I remember, and I was by no means first on this boat, but when we were doing a mock draft for Superflex on one of these shows, I threw Zack Wilson at the end of for the first or the second, and I had got some looks at that time, and boy, how half a year can change some of this stuff. So we'll see how much stuff changes in a month and a half, 2 months. But I like Zack Wilson. The sort of stuff, he's incredibly accurate, which is great. He's got that mobility. It's not a Justin Fields type of mobility in terms of the size and the athletic ability, but he can move and make plays on the run. A couple things that I noticed, he often starts getting out of the pocket and all that when you don't have to. He sort of has that, I got to make something myself out of this when he necessarily doesn't have to. Now, how much that had to do with the talent around him, being at BYU, I don't necessarily know, but he has more of this, and I didn't like this, and maybe it's because I was not a Packer fan living in Packer country. He has that sort of Favre mentality that people seem to just love, and to me it's like Favre killed you in games as often as he won it for you, and that's sacrilegious to say up here, but I don't know. Another guy that reminds me of that, not to pile on him, Winston. Jameis Winston does some of that where he's a gunslinger just throwing it when all right, you don't have to do that, and it leads to turnovers. It leads to problems. So can that be coached out of him? Can he get sort of under control so he doesn't end up being, as he was sort of anointed for God knows why, the Mormon Manziel, because God knows we don't need that in the league at all. I hope he doesn't turn into that because I really like him. But that whole gunslinger thing, I've just never been a fan of personally.
I mean, it has its place, so when you need a guy that can shake off a bad play or an interception, like that gunslinger mentality can be very beneficial.
Yeah.
But you can't have that all game, for stretches of weeks at a time like you had with Favre. I mean, that becomes detrimental. Paul, what's your take on Wilson? I know he is your favorite quarterback in this class, if I remember correctly.
He's at least my favorite from a value perspective. He's got functional legs. The accuracy, once in a while, it's not there, but once in a while, dimes. The pocket presence, once in a while is fine, once in a while isn't. he needs to shorten up the throwing motion a little bit. But once I looked at receivers, line, and thought about coaching a little bit, he's got a higher ceiling than what I was thinking initially. When I watched him, he didn't have any help. And whenever you see individuals who don't have help, Andrew Luck becomes your first thought there. And he's just someone I would consider selecting second overall in a super flex league. He's just someone I'm highly interested in because you're not going to have to spend first overall money. And I find it hard, even with him being second to fifth overall-ish in the actual NFL, that he's not going to end up somewhere where he doesn't have more talent than what he's had before. He's slightly skinny, 209 I think he is, but just from an upside perspective and your investment, love him.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw some love to our boy Thomas. He's one of our evaluators that is in a different country, so he isn't able to be on these shows. But I really would love to get him on one of these shows. I'm just going to read his comments on him word for word. Typically, I don't do that in a lot of our videos, but I thought he did a good job explaining it. More athletic than he looks. Good thrower on the run. Questionable decision-making and ball placement on some throws. Has the intangibles to be very good if he continues to improve his decision-making. That pretty much explains it, But then again, you get to the point where, the kid came from BYU. I mean, they're not exactly pumping out a ton of NFL talent on the regular, and especially at the quarterback position. So there's something there with this guy. If you get him in the right system, and I think that's probably something more spread out, so some sort of spread principled offense, I think you have a better shot of him being successful, which is fine. I mean, we want passing, from a quarterback after all. I do like Matt's comment over on YouTube. If Wilson was such a god tier prospect, where was he in 2019 and 2018? He was dog water.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can find that, and I responded, because we're doing a couple of these at the same time. There's plenty of guys that just weren't doing it their whole college career. I mean, you can find any number of these. I mean, Josh Allen wasn't anything amazing until his final year. Mahomes had nice numbers, but it's not like he was some top-level quarterback coming out of that class either. Hindsight is 2020. Mahomes wasn't one of the top, 3, 4, probably 4, but not one of the top 3 guys being talked about leading up to that draft. And look where he is now. So, that's part of the process you have to work through is which of these guys that come on the scene late belong up there, and which of them, Johnny Manziel, is it just a flash in the pan and they can't make it? Because you have both situations.
Yeah. Well, and you had that with Burrow too. I mean, everyone had written Burrow off. One great season.
Yeah.
He's number 1 pick. I mean, so I get it. I mean, and that's the tough conversation that we have to determine, especially when you're looking at a smaller school prospect who has not NFL caliber talent around him. I mean, the 2 guys that we said before him had tons of NFL talent all over their team, offense, defense, across the board. This guy, I mean, I was trying to think off the top of my head. I can't think of more than a couple BYU guys that are really draft eligible that I think will be drafted this year. I mean, he did a lot with a little, and that goes to the character and his work ethic and some of those things. So I'm intrigued by him for sure. I like his size. I like a lot of the things you can't coach, Again, between the ears you can work on. Get him with a good quarterback coach. But I really think, in my mind, when I look at these guys, I try to, at this point in the process, it's more fun for me to try to figure out where's a good spot for them to go. As I'm evaluating them, I look at what I think would be a good landing spot and, give him to a team that's spread out. I think he'll be really successful and give you fantasy value. So, yeah. Oh, Sully! Our boy Sully's in the chat. To Craig's point, go back to 2018 and see how those 5 were ranked. Oh, the 2018 quarterback class. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it, but...
Before the draft?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably Baker 1, Darnold 2, Allen 3, Rosen, and then Jackson. I mean, at least from a May 1st perspective. If we're talking February 1st, Darnold, Allen, Darnold, Rosen, Baker, Allen, Jackson. I mean, that's a February or March 1st from that year. I mean, you can flip some of that, but
that's
what it was.
Well, one last thing on the point about, people improving, the mental aspect of it. And this is just another thing that you never really know until you know, and you have to rely on anecdotes about character. That only improves if someone wants to improve. And I don't think we've had a lot of it lately, but there have been guys that they make it to the NFL off a big college career or a big college season. They get that contract and they give up. So you have to be making that judgment. Yes, this is something generally you can work on and improve upon once you get to the pros and you're dedicated to that as your job. Some people don't care. So that's where some of that character stuff that you do hear about, that'll matter, or it should matter to a degree when you're drafting these guys.
All right, so Trey Lance, next up on the list, 6'3", 224-ish, North Dakota State. We haven't seen him since 2019, but 2019 looked like on the rise. Kraig, what do you think about him?
To me, he's the sort of the great unknown of these top guys that we're talking about here. He came from that not top tier level school in North Dakota State University, and he looked great. I mean, he was fun to watch. He was exciting to watch. He's got that athletic ability. He's got the arm. His accuracy, for the most part, is there. But it's one of those things where what do we really know about him? So I think he has enough of it where the team is going to invest a top half of the first NFL pick in him probably. You don't really hear anything bad about him as a person or issues at college like that. His team liked him. But what sort of learning curve is there going to be? They talked about sort of these same sort of things with Carson Wentz, and I don't think he's going to go that high, coming from that same school. But how's he going to adapt? How long is it going to take him? He probably should sit behind someone, so you need to take that into account. I wouldn't be comfortable having him as my NFL team starter week one, much less fantasy starter week one. But long term, I think he's really exciting, and you get him with someone that can help him grow into those abilities that he has. And I like him. I'd probably have him 4 or 5 overall right now for quarterbacks in fantasy myself. Paul?
I think he's third. He's basically traits only. The game they played earlier this year, or in like August or whatever, the whole team looked horrible, so you can basically throw that one out. He's got functional legs. Obviously, he's got the size. I noticed that his deep accuracy is just not there at all. But on the short to intermediate, it's fine. As far as a pure arm, I like that also. Not elite, but I thought he looked to run a little often, but you're basically watching true sophomore film on him. Okay. The throwing motion is a little long for him. And he doesn't have a lot of touch, but again, you're talking true sophomore at a school where I don't want to say he doesn't have help, but he doesn't have NFL players at every position. The pocket presence I was a fan of, but that's also because he looks to run, so take that for what it is. Ultimately, he's going to end up in the top half of the first. He's going to be interesting in Superflex leagues. I wouldn't touch him before about 7, 8, 9, but
he's going top 5
after that,
Superflex, I would think.
I would think so also, but who knows? I don't think someone in the NFL is going to be like, hey, you're starting for us by week 4, like what happened with Herbert. Now that's its own little situation, but I can't see anyone saying that and actually sticking with it. The upside is there, but you also have a zero floor downside here also.
Yeah, I mean, this is of the first round pick prospects that we're talking about currently. He's got the most room to grow, but he's got a lot of the same skills and traits that you see in these other guys. He's just more raw. So if he goes somewhere where he can sit, I know I try to look around and see the different mocks from the different experts, and a lot of them have him going somewhere like Atlanta where he can sit behind Ryan, or San Fran where he can sit behind Garoppolo. I mean, like a year would do good for him, and I think ultimately,
Yep.
I think he can be successful even if he gets thrown into the fray. But if he does, I mean, that's going to be tougher for him because he's had a year off. Not only that, he's raw as a prospect. I mean, I hope they give this kid a break and try to ease him in for his benefit. Rick, I think the one thing people forget when these guys are ranked is just because one guy's ahead of another, it doesn't mean that 4 or 5 of these guys can't be good. There is no rule against it. It's very true. All of these guys could be something. I mean, the way this league is going right now, quarterbacks aren't getting nearly as long a time to develop. So these guys could be given the opportunity. I mean, there's easily 4 to 6 of these guys in this draft that I think are at least have the ability to be a starter at some point in their career. If they are, I don't know, but there's at least 4 or 6 of them that I like enough that I think they could be an NFL starter.
Well, and even in terms of fantasy, you got to think long term. All right, if this guy doesn't pan out right away, am I going to be all right holding on to him? Do I have the bench space and all that sort of stuff? Where maybe it isn't a true stash because you don't want to be, especially in one QB leagues, hanging on to 6 quarterbacks or something in your sort of 10, 12 team league. But a guy like Ryan Tannehill got drafted early, went to a situation that wasn't very good. He got a second shot. I mean, we don't see that a lot in the NFL, guys getting that second shot and producing, but we can still have that opportunity to show up here. So there's still hope for Mitch Trubisky out there, Rick. I know you're listening. It might not be with the Bears, but maybe it is. Maybe he goes somewhere else in, Green Bay when Jordan Love doesn't pan out and Rodgers leaves for San Francisco or something. We'll see. But just keep that in mind with these guys, too. Like, to Brad's point, these guys have short leashes on their initial teams. That isn't the death knell that it was anymore because a lot of these contracts, teams are just having outs to churn things over and get someone else in there.
Yeah, he might need the help. I mean, Nick Foles, Dwayne Haskins, Minshew, Cam Newton.
All right, so next.
All right, moving on. What is
need
it, Trask?
Yeah, next
Trask?
up is Trask. Get out of here, Paul. I'm mute buttoning you. All right, so Kyle Trask, 6'5", 239. This is the kid that, he's the epitome of the wait and see because he just had to keep waiting for his chance. If I remember correctly, when I was looking into him, I don't even think he was the starter on his high school team. I think he had to wait to be the starter.
King, Miami.
Well, yeah, I know in Miami he had to wait too.
No, Miami's De'Aaron King was ahead of him in high school.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. So this guy waited and waited and waited, and finally last year broke out. And he showed what a lot of people thought they saw in him in the first place. Big kid that does a good job running the pocket. Has the arm strength. He's very accurate. I mean, 2020 was good to him, and I think he did a good job showing that he can maneuver the pocket, that he can read the pocket, step up, make the reads, make the throws. I mean, there wasn't a lot of his game that I saw that I didn't like. And people in our league last year when I took him in the Devy draft prior to the season, I had a few people message me and ask me if I was crazy that I was wasting a pick on him, and I was like, I think the kid has the potential if he could just finally get a chance. And I don't think I don't think he let me down. Obviously, our team as well seems to be high on him. They have him, right now when we look at our ratings, he's in the top 5. So the evaluators seem to like him as well. Kraig, what do you think about Mr. Trask?
I have him much lower on this list. I'm not a fan of him, and unlike all of the guys that we've talked about thus far, to me, he doesn't have the mobility that teams are looking for, and I think that's really going to hamper him in today's NFL. He's sort of a throwback. To make a rib at myself here, Troy Aikman, sort of that guy that just isn't someone that's going to be moving around the pocket, making plays with their legs for the most part, and I think that hurts him. And we talked about that whole that 1 year wonder sort of thing. Well, here's another guy that really fits into that. What's he going to be? Is he going to be Burrow, or is he going to end up being I don't know, someone else who's just junk? I don't have a name to pull off the top of my head. But he has accuracy. He has that competitiveness. He overcame a lot, as you talked about. So there are good things with him. I just wasn't overly impressed with him. I know he put up really great numbers, which is nice to see. But you got to look at more than just the numbers. And with the way things are going in the league, he's not someone that I'm going to be investing in. Paul.
Okay, let's hit the pluses first. The accuracy, and the athlete. There's enough under him with the legs, and he's smart enough with his legs. Okay. Let's hit the negatives. I don't think his arm strength is good. And putting it there. I think he walks himself right into a lot of sacks. And in the pros, where he's not going to have the line that he has at Florida, it concerns me. He throws off his back foot a lot. He throws it high a lot because of it. I don't see it. Also, he's not overly quick on the hips, and it makes me concerned if he's under pressure. He's going to end up between 30 and 50 overall for me. Well, he's going to end up between 30 and 50 overall in the actual draft, and you're going to have to select him probably early second in the Superflex leagues. Maybe if he falls beyond that, but I'm not interested before.
Yeah, I think he's going to go higher than that. I mean, just based on where people are talking about him being drafted probably in the NFL draft, he's probably just going to go higher than I would want to take him in a Superflex league. I mean, yeah, I'm not sitting out here knocking the guy saying he's terrible or anything, but, with what I saw and then just where quarterbacks are going, like you said about Fields, Paul, he's going to go at a level that you're not comfortable taking him, so he won't end up being your problem. So
there you go. All right.
Sorry to leave you on an island, Brad.
Hey, that's okay. I don't mind being on an island. Next up, Kellen Mond. He is 6'2", 6'3", 205. Had an up and down career. Could develop into something. I'm not the biggest fan. I like his athletic ability. I like some of his, his arm strength. His progressions aren't terrible, but for the position he was in with the team that he was on, I really thought that I was really expecting better and more. His mechanics are a little kind of wonky in my mind as I watched him. But he's an intriguing prospect as a guy that could develop into something. Probably will need a few years, maybe 2 or more to really see any kind of return on the investment. But, we'll see. What do you think, Kraig?
This is one of the developmental guys that I like, and I know we mentioned him earlier. He's sort of similar to Jamie Newman, except, Mond has shown it for longer. Like you said, he's got that athletic ability and size. He's not like a true runner like Fields or has that sort of Zack Wilson type mobility. But, there's good stuff about him. He just isn't someone that I think should be starting in the NFL within his first couple of years. I think he's one of those guys that you're going to want to have sit behind someone like a Jordan Love. Does that mean he goes in the first round? Probably not, but
Green
who
Bay's got a
knows?
pick.
So, yeah, and who knows what happens with Rodgers? They might find some value and get rid of him in a year or two. to a team like Chicago or something. So I do like Mond, but like I said, you're not going to be taking him early in the draft. I don't think he's a late sleeper because he's a name that guys are talking about. He's probably going to be, I'd say, an early day 3 pick. So if you're looking for someone to stash, probably in a super flex, I don't think you need to take him in a 1 QB league unless you're extremely large rosters, extremely large league. But he could certainly grow into someone I could see as a viable NFL starter. Just, probably not going to be in your top couple tiers.
Paulie, what do you think about him?
He's got the frame, he's got the legs. He's a little bit slow in deciphering, okay, if this throw isn't open, who's my next option? It's not that he doesn't see it, he's just a little slow on reading it, and his accuracy is horrible. If he's not in the first round, maybe second round conversation with somebody like Fisher helping him for, let's see, the Taggart era was 3 years ago. I hate that guy. Anyways, if he had Fisher's help for 3 years and he's still not here, sorry, you're just off the list.
There you go.
So just in the NFL, you can't have issues where it's obvious at that position, and he's got obvious accuracy issues.
Yep. No,
sorry.
I mean that's why we put him in the purely developmental category. If something comes from it and they fix some of those things and can work on that, we'll see. All right, so I'm seeing that we're getting close to our deadline, so we need to make sure we get this guy in. So we're going to Mac Jones, quarterback, Alabama. Now, obviously, if you look at a lot of the mocks, he's crept up kind of in the mid-first of the NFL draft. Teams are pegging him as Patriots or Reds, Washington football team. They're taking him from one red jersey to another red jersey. So there's, it looks like he's climbing up in the NFL draft, at the early on stages, kind of mid-January, you were seeing back end of the first maybe, and now he's getting even higher than that. Now, when you look at the player, I mean, good size, 6'2", 6'3", yeah. Yep, 6'2", 6'3", 217, Alabama, he's facing NFL caliber talent on the regular, went all the way to the championship, led the team and looked like a leader. He played well. He can make all 3 levels of throws that you need him to. He's not really great at anything, but he's not terrible at anything. It's kind of the, he's all right, and all right sometimes can be turned into something. He has a lot of the intangibles that you can't really teach, which is the arm strength, I think, is more than capable of doing what NFL teams need him to do. I think he does a good job in the pocket, moving around and doing some of those things. Like we've talked about, he's probably not, uber mobile quarterback, but, he's probably, I mean, if I had to liken him to somebody when it comes to mobility, probably Tannehill-ish. He's going to get you less than 300 yards rushing a season if given the opportunity. I'd guess probably 2 to 250 because he's scrambling around a little bit, but I don't see him as a big mobile quarterback. Could be wrong there. Kraig, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sort of like Trask, the athleticism, I think, is the biggest issue for him. They're sort of similar, I think, in that, they both had to sit around and wait their turn. Jones has really good accuracy, especially in that championship game against that high-level defense. I know they had injuries and stuff, but he stepped up and showed it there. He's able to read the field. He's got poise. He played well against a high level of competition. His teammates speak glowingly about him, which, that isn't necessarily something, but for a quarterback, it's one of those things where when people talk about you really well, it's like, all right, that's expected. And when they don't talk about you, it's like, what's going on with him? He checks all those sort of intangible boxes, which I really like. And I again, today's NFL, I don't know, but if he gets to the right system, could he be someone like, he's smaller than him, but like a Roethlisberger where he's able to just, make the throws, but he isn't a rushing guy? Yeah, I think he could be. So we'll have to see if it plays out. But, I have him a little bit higher up here. I think I have him around 5, and he's like around 7 or, something like that on our list. So I think I like him a little bit more than the consensus at the time, but it might be that he's getting up too high for me to take, in a super flex based on his NFL positioning. So, Paul?
Yeah, I just looked over my notes and I realized I'm lower on him than just about anybody else. He's got the frame, he's got the accuracy. The issue I have is he's a little slow with his hips. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but if he looks right and he has to then flip and look left, it's awful slow. And they're gonna see that. If he doesn't have a clean pocket, oh boy, it's not here. I don't think the throwing motion for him is that good, and because of that, he loses a lot off of his fastball when he throws it. I just don't like him at all. I think I wrote down that he was around 3 selection before that, and I think it's more of an upside if you can fix all the issues that he has. I'm just not sold, and I see too many issues with him.
Who do you like more, him or Tua?
Tua. I can at least see the upside there. I don't see it here.
Like we've talked about plenty of times on this show, I follow quite a few different draft groups, Draft Tech and TDN. I thought TDN's comp was interesting. They comped him to like an Andy Dalton type guy. Could have a long NFL career, but when it comes to fantasy, that doesn't really impress. If you're looking for a guy that could be a nice solid depth quarterback for your fantasy roster, a guy that in a pinch you could play, okay, that's whatever. That's no big deal. But in my mind, if you're picking in the first round of your Superflex leagues and Mac Jones is on the clock, or an elite upside, wide receiver, a Terrace Marshall or some running back. I mean, like I'm going with one of these other positions. I mean, I'm just not in the first round. I'm not going to do that to myself or my team. So,
well, even if he does end up being Dalton, and even let's say you're playing in a super flex league, at best he's your second quarterback, and even then, he's not going to be. I don't have any experience trying to, but I can't imagine Andy Dalton when he was starting was ever a highly priced quarterback in your basic 12-team Superflex league either.
Yeah, I have to look.
I've never tried it, so I'm not going to guess here. But you're not going to be giving up 2 firsts to get Andy Dalton in a Superflex league or something like that, unless Paul has every quarterback and he's trying to show you up on a YouTube channel or something like that. But then you go somewhere else for your trade. So
Paul does. He's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time.
It's going to be funny. It's going to be funny when he ultimately asks me what I want for Winston, and I'm just going to smile.
I doubt that will
happen.
If
that happens, let us know.
My next check on
I'm
that.
pretty sure at that point something's frozen over. And speaking of frozen over, our time is frozen over. I don't really think that even makes sense, but we're done. We got through 7 and kind of 8. We mentioned some sleeper guys. Hopefully that helped you guys out and give you something to at least think about as you're building your QB list for your rookie drafts. As always, if you need help, we've got a Discord chat, Facebook community that is growing every day. I see new people asking to join. Twitter, you can slide into the DMs, at least for Kraig and I, and we will answer your Twitter questions as best we can, or pose them to the group and get you a consensus answer, whatever we can do to help. We will be back here next week talking, I think it's rookie running backs, so that'll be a good one. We will get some nice other guests on here unless Kraig wants to come back. We always enjoy having Kraig around. If not, you guys will see Kraig again on Monday as we're talking more IDP shenanigans. We thank you guys. Check out rookiedraftguide.com for more in-depth analysis on these guys that we've kind of talked about a little bit. And don't forget, like, subscribe, do all those things, and we will talk to you again later. Love you, bye.